This film follows the story of a couple who drive out to their lake house to spice up their marriage life. But when the husband dies unexpectedly, the wife is left handcuffed to the bed with no means of escape. But that's not the only thing she needs to fear, as something far darker is lurking in the house. Hey guys, today I am going to explain a drama horror thriller film released in 2017 called Gerald's Game. At the beginning of the film, we see Jesse and Gerald, a married couple, who are driving to their isolated lake house to spend some time alone. On the way, they see a dog in the middle of the road feeding on a dead rat. Although Jesse wants to bring the dog with them, Gerald scares the dog away and continues on their journey. After driving for hours, they finally reach their isolated lake house. Jesse explores the beautiful house and sees that the fridge is already stocked up. She takes the meat and goes to feed the stray dog they saw earlier. Meanwhile, Gerald takes some pills in the bathroom. He then calls for Jesse and unintentionally scares the dog away again. The couple heads inside and leaves the door open. Jesse changes into a new slip she bought, removes the tag, and practices some sexy poses. Gerald comes out of the bathroom with a pair of handcuffs in his hand. Jesse is somewhat skeptical of the cuffs but agrees to put them on. So Gerald cuffs both her hands to the sides of the bed. He then takes some pills and leaves his glass of water on the shelf above the bed. Jesse is now beginning to feel uncomfortable, but Gerald doesn't stop and begins to enact his fantasies. He tells Jesse to scream for help, saying that no one will hear her screaming. But when Gerald gets too aggressive, Jesse yells at him to stop. Gerald gets annoyed by this and questions Jesse why she doesn't put any effort to rekindle the relationship. He blames her for their deteriorating relationship, accusing her of not even trying. But Jesse says that it's all Gerald's fault and that the relationship is not going to work. She did try to fulfill his fantasies, but she can't do it anymore. She then asks Gerald to uncuff her and then they can talk about the relationship. But Gerald refuses and says, "What if I won't?" He then gets on top of Jesse and tries to get her in the mood, but suddenly he gets a heart attack and falls on top of her. Jesse panics and thinks that Gerald is still acting. She tries to push him off her, and because of this, Gerald falls onto the floor. Since she is still handcuffed to the bedpost, she is unable to do anything except hope for Gerald to wake up. But to her shock, Gerald begins to bleed from his head because of the fall. Jesse panics and cries out loud for help, but there is no one nearby to hear her cry. Hours pass by and Jesse still hopes for Gerald to miraculously wake up. But then she hears footsteps coming from outside and calls for help. But it turns out to be the stray dog from earlier. The dog then enters the room and starts licking the blood on the floor. Jesse tries to scare it away, but the starving dog bites a chunk out of Gerald's arm and starts eating it right in front of Jesse. Jesse is horrified by this, but she is helpless in the situation. Just then, Gerald stands up and begins talking to Jesse, blaming her for feeding the dog earlier. Jesse is relieved to see her husband back on his feet and asks him to uncuff her. But when she looks at the floor, she is shocked to see Gerald's body still lying on the floor. She realizes that the man talking to her is nothing but her imagination. Gerald starts blabbering about himself and taunts Jesse about the truth of their strained marriage. He also makes fun of her by saying that she wasted her precious time, hoping for him to get up and uncuff her. She spent hours waiting for him despite knowing that he is dead. Gerald informs her that she is beginning to suffer from dehydration and fatigue, and if she doesn't do anything soon, she will end up dead just like him. He tells her that there is no point in screaming for help as no one is going to come to her rescue. The only one who can help her is she herself. So Jessie tries pulling her hand out from the cuffs. She miraculously manages to pull a hand out of the cuffs and breaks free. She is finally free from the cuffs and turns around to gloat. But she is shocked to see herself still being cuffed to the bed. She realizes that she is hallucinating again and that it won't be easy to break herself free from the cuffs. Gerald II and Jessie II then try to convince Jessie to try to do something to break free. They remind her that if she doesn't free herself soon, she will end up dead. While thinking of a way to break free, the hallucinations realize that the shelf above the bed has a glass of water that Gerald left earlier. After a lot of struggle, she manages to grab the glass but is unable to bring it all the way to her mouth. So the hallucinations remind her of the tag she put on the slip earlier. Jessie grabs the tag, rolls it into a drinking straw, and finally manages to drink the water using the tag. After this, she falls asleep. When she wakes up in the dark, she sees a tall, deformed figure walking towards her. Believing him to be her imagination, she closes her eyes and says that he is not real. Gerald tells her that the figure may be death waiting to take her. He then begins calling Jessie Mouse, which makes her uncomfortable. This triggers a memory of her father Tom, who used to call her Mouse when she was 12. One day, when the rest of the family went out to have some fun, Jessie and Tom decided to stay back. The two then sit in a park to watch a solar eclipse. Tom then asks Jessie to sit on her lap, which she innocently does. While she is enjoying the eclipse, Tom takes advantage of her innocence by pleasuring himself. Jessie wakes up from her vision and is in complete pain. Jessie II taunts Jessie by saying that she married a man just like her father, as she never managed to recover from the assault. When Gerald asks Jessie about what happened later, Jessie replies that it's a secret that she can't tell him. Gerald then points out that the dog wasn't there at night because someone or something scared it. When Jessie checks the floor, she sees footprints of the disfigured man, which means that she wasn't hallucinating and he was real. Jessie then gets another flashback, where her father visited her in her room after watching the solar eclipse. Tom asked her to sit beside him and apologized for taking advantage of her. He then manipulated Jessie to not tell anyone about the incident, saying that it will affect both of them. So Jessie agreed to keep it a secret and never to reveal it to anyone under any circumstances. When she wakes up, Gerald comes up to her and tells her that she is going to die soon. Jessie falls for his words and begins to believe that she is going to die. In her dream, she visits her younger self in handcuffs and apologizes to her for everything. But young Jessie tells her that she doesn't want her sorry. She wants her to remember what happened after the assault. In the flashback, when the family was having dinner, Jessie broke a glass in her hand in anger when her mother asked her about the eclipse. Her father took her to the bathroom to tend to her injuries and told her to be more careful. Jessie wakes up and realizes that she can cut her hand using the glass on the shelf, because of which she will be able to remove her hand from the handcuffs. Jessie II agrees with the plan, but Gerald warns her that she may even lose her life if she is not careful. But since she has no other option, she decides to proceed with her plan. After taking a deep breath, she breaks the glass in her hand. She then places the broken glass on the shelf and starts cutting her wrist. Despite feeling unbearable pain, she continues cutting her wrist. She then tries pulling her hand out, which then begins to slip, but her skin also comes off because of it. Jessie finally manages to pull her hand out of the cuffs and she frees herself. She then grabs the key from the bathroom and removes her other hand. After so much struggle, she is finally able to free herself. Jessie doesn't waste any time and bandages her wrist. She then goes to grab the car key but passes out on the floor from blood loss and fatigue. When she wakes up, the dog bites her but she scares the dog away. She then sees Gerald's dead body and notices that half of his face is ripped off. Just when she grabs the car keys, she sees that the disfigured man from earlier is standing at the door. Jessie approaches the man and gives him her wedding ring. She then gets in her car and drives away. But because of the blood loss, she keeps dozing off. Just then, the disfigured man appears in the backseat and whispers mouse to her. Jessie then loses consciousness and crashes the car into a tree. Fortunately, people from a nearby house hear the noise and come out to help her. Jessie regains her consciousness and honks at the people to tell them her location. 6 months pass by and Jessie has recovered from her injuries. She writes a letter to her 12-year-old self using the wounded hand, telling her that she pretended to have amnesia to avoid painful questions about the incident. She then claims some of Gerald's life insurance, which she then used to start a foundation for victims like her who were sexually abused by their parents or relatives. But every night, the disfigured man still appears before her as she falls asleep. The police failed to find her wedding ring in the house. But one day, Jessie reads the newspaper and learns about Raymond Andrew Jobert, a serial killer who digs up crypts, steals bones and jewels from the dead, and even eats the faces of male corpses. Jessie realizes that the man is the same disfigured man whom she saw at the lake house. Raymond is a serial killer who has killed over 50 people in just 2 years. But for some reason, he chose to spare Jessie. The day when Raymond is being sentenced, Jessie goes to confront him and calls for his attention. Raymond then repeats the same words she said before leaving the house, which means that he was in fact there at the time. Jessie goes near him and says, "You are much smaller than I remember." She then walks triumphantly out into the forest with the sunlight gleaming down on her. And so this was the story of Gerald's Game. For more interesting movies, you can subscribe to our channel. Let me know what you think and see you in the